Emma Rodriguez pushed her ergonomic chair back from the triple monitor setup and rubbed her tired eyes. The blue light from the screens had been her constant companion for the past 14 hours, and the familiar ache behind her temples told her she'd been staring too long at the satellite feeds. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Mapcore Technologies' 42nd floor office, San Francisco's fog was rolling in from the Pacific, painting the city in soft gray hues that made the digital world seem even more surreal. "Another all-nighter, Em?" called out Jake from the neighboring cubicle, his voice carrying the easy familiarity of someone who'd worked alongside her for 3 years. "You know the satellites aren't going anywhere, right?" Emma managed a weak smile. "Tell that to the Pentagon. They want the new coastal mapping data by morning, and something's been acting up with the European feeds." She gestured at her center monitor, where what should have been a crystal-clear view of the Mediterranean coastline was instead showing strange dark patches, as if someone had taken a digital eraser to entire sections of the Earth. The anomaly had first appeared 6 days ago, starting as small black dots scattered across various mapping platforms. At first, Emma had dismissed them as typical satellite glitches or weather interference. But the patches were growing, and more troubling still, they were appearing in the exact same locations, across completely different satellite systems: Google, Earth, military reconnaissance feeds, weather satellites, commercial mapping services, all showing identical dark zones. Emma pulled up her analysis dashboard, a complex web of data streams that she'd spent months perfecting. The numbers told a story that made her stomach clench with unease. The black zones weren't random. They formed a pattern, a geometric precision that natural phenomena simply couldn't achieve. Each zone was roughly circular, varying in size from a few miles to massive areas spanning entire cities. But it was their distribution that truly worried her. "Jake, can you come look at this?" she called, her voice carrying an edge of urgency that made him immediately abandon his own work. Jake wheeled his chair over, bringing with him the familiar scent of coffee and the slightly nervous energy he always had when Emma got that particular tone in her voice. "What's got you spooked?" Emma highlighted the anomalous zones on her world map. "Look at the pattern. These aren't appearing randomly. They're following major population centers, strategic military installations, and..." She paused, pulling up another layer of data: communication hubs, every major satellite uplink facility, internet backbone connection, and radio telescope array. Jake leaned closer, his casual demeanor shifting to focused attention. That's not possible. These systems are completely independent. Different satellites, different companies, different countries. There's no way they'd all malfunction in the same pattern." "Exactly." Emma's fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up time-lapse data. "But watch this. The zones aren't just appearing randomly in time either. They're spreading in a wave pattern, starting from the Pacific and moving eastward. Whatever's causing this, it's systematic." The time-lapse showed the dark zones appearing like ripples in a pond, each new blackout coordinated with mathematical precision. The wave had started somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and was now approaching the west coast of the Americas. Jake whistled low. "Emma, this looks almost like someone's jamming us," she finished. "But from where and how? The amount of power it would take to interfere with this many different systems simultaneously would be..." She trailed off, running quick calculations in her head. "It would require technology we don't have." Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message from her supervisor. The text was brief but alarming. "Need full analysis by 0600. Pentagon briefing. Scheduled. This is now classified." Emma's hands trembled slightly as she saved her work to the secure server. In 3 years of working on sensitive mapping projects, she'd never seen anything escalate to classified status so quickly. The implications were staggering. If this was some kind of attack on global satellite infrastructure, it represented a threat to everything from GPS navigation to weather prediction to military communications. "I need coffee," she muttered, standing up and stretching muscles that had been cramped in the same position for too long. "And I need to figure out how to explain to the Pentagon that our entire satellite mapping network is being systematically blinded by something we can't identify." As she walked to the break room, Emma's mind raced through possibilities. Solar flares could cause widespread interference, but not with this kind of precision. Cyber attacks could target individual systems, but not physical satellite feeds. Some kind of atmospheric phenomenon might explain localized blackouts, but not the global scope and perfect timing they were seeing. The coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the quiet office with the comforting sound of brewing caffeine. Through the break room window, Emma could see the lights of the city spread out below, each one representing thousands of people who had no idea that their digital connection to the world was being systematically severed. Her phone rang, showing a number she didn't recognize, but with a government prefix that made her answer immediately. Emma Rodriguez, MapCore Technologies. Ms. Rodriguez, this is Director Patricia Walsh from the National Reconnaissance Office. I understand you've been tracking the satellite anomalies. Emma's heart rate spiked. The NRO didn't call civilian contractors unless something was seriously wrong. Yes, ma'am. I've been analyzing the patterns for the past week. I need you to stop what you're doing and report to our facility in Colorado immediately. A car will pick you up in 20 minutes. Mum, I'm not sure I understand. This is just a mapping glitch, right? Some kind of technical malfunction. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Director Walsh spoke again, her voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen too many impossible things become reality. Ms. Rodriguez, 3 hours ago, the Hubble Space Telescope detected a massive object approaching Earth from deep space. It's approximately the size of Manhattan, moving at impossible speeds, and it's emitting electromagnetic pulses that perfectly match the interference patterns you've been tracking. Emma's coffee mug slipped from her numb fingers, shattering on the tile floor. We're saying this is first contact, Ms. Rodriguez, and right now, you're the only person on Earth who understands how they're communicating with us. Marcus Chen pressed his eye to the telescope's eyepiece and adjusted the focus with practiced precision. The Arecibo Observatory's massive radio dish stretched out below him like a metallic crater, carved into the Puerto Rican mountains, its surface gleaming under the tropical sun. For 15 years, he'd been listening to the cosmos through this magnificent instrument, searching for patterns in the cosmic background radiation, mapping pulsars, and secretly hoping to be the first person to detect signs of extraterrestrial intelligence. Today, he was getting more than he'd bargained for. Computer, run another spectral analysis on the 1420 megahertz band, Marcus said, his voice echoing in the control room. The walls were lined with decades-old equipment mixed with cutting-edge digital processors, creating a technological timeline that spoke to humanity's evolving relationship with the stars. The data streaming across his monitors defied every principle of radio astronomy he'd learned. For the past 3 days, the telescope had been picking up structured signals buried deep within what should have been random cosmic noise. The signals were incredibly faint, requiring the full power of Arecibo's sensitive receivers to detect. But their mathematical precision was undeniable. Dr. Chen, the voice belonged to Isabella Morales, his graduate research assistant, who'd been working alongside him since the anomalies began. She was brilliant, with an intuitive understanding of signal processing that sometimes made Marcus feel like a dinosaur. The pattern analysis is complete, and you're not going to believe this. Marcus turned from the telescope controls, noting the excitement and worry warring across Isabella's face. Show me. Isabella pulled up the visualization on the main display screen. What appeared was a complex waveform that pulsed with rhythmic precision, but embedded within it were smaller patterns, fractals of information that repeated at different scales. It's not just a signal, Isabella explained, her fingers dancing across the keyboard to highlight different aspects of the data. It's a carrier wave containing thousands of individual transmissions. Each burst contains mathematical constants, pi, the golden ratio, prime number sequences, but they're arranged in groups that suggest language. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Language? You mean these signals are actually trying to communicate? That's not even the strangest part. Isabella brought up another screen showing signal strength over time. The transmission power is increasing in a very specific pattern. It started barely detectable 3 days ago, but it's getting stronger by exactly 3.7% every hour. At this rate, it'll be strong enough for amateur radio operators to detect within 48 hours. They're gradually announcing themselves, Marcus breathed, giving us time to prepare. His phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Marcus glanced at it and felt his world shift. The message was from Dr. Patricia Walsh at the National Reconnaissance Office, requesting immediate consultation on signals intelligence related to recent satellite anomalies. Isabella, I need you to continue monitoring and recording everything. Don't let anyone else know about the language patterns until I get back. Where are you going? To find out if we're the only ones hearing these voices. 4 hours later, Marcus found himself in the back of a military transport aircraft, flying toward Colorado with a headache from the rapid altitude changes and a head full of questions. Across from him sat a young woman with tired eyes and ink-stained fingers who'd introduced herself simply as Emma. You're the cartographer, Marcus said, studying her face. She was pretty in an understated way, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and the kind of focused intensity that came from spending long hours solving complex problems. Emma nodded. And you're the radio astronomer who's been tracking the signals. Director Walsh thinks our data might be connected, more than connected. Marcus replied, pulling out his tablet to show her the signal analysis. I think your mapping blackouts are being caused by the same source as my radio transmissions. Look at the timing. Emma leaned closer to examine his data, and Marcus caught a faint scent of coffee and something floral, probably her shampoo. The signal strength increases correlate exactly with the expansion of the dark zones, she said, her voice filled with growing excitement. Marcus, this is incredible. They're not jamming our satellites. They're calibrating them. Calibrating them for what? I don't know yet, but look at this pattern. Emma pulled out her own tablet, showing him the geometric distribution of the blackout zones. They're not random. They're creating a grid pattern across the Earth's surface. With nodes at major communication hubs, Marcus studied the pattern, his mind racing through the implications. It's like they're mapping our communication infrastructure, learning how we connect to each other, or preparing to connect with us, Emma added softly. The aircraft banked sharply, beginning its descent toward the classified facility. Through the small window, Marcus could see the Rocky Mountains rising like ancient guardians around a valley that officially didn't exist on any map. Emma, he said, surprising himself with how natural her name felt on his tongue. What do you think happens when first contact finally occurs? I mean, really happens. Emma was quiet for a moment, staring out at the mountains. I used to think it would be this dramatic moment, you know, ships appearing over major cities, aliens walking down ramps to meet world leaders. But this feels different, more careful, more considerate, like they're trying not to scare us. Exactly. The gradual signal increase, the systematic approach to our communication networks. It's almost like they're following some kind of first contact protocol, designed to minimize cultural shock. The aircraft touched down on a runway that seemed to materialize from the mountainside, as they were escorted into an underground facility that was far larger and more sophisticated than anything Marcus had imagined. He found himself walking close enough to Emma that their shoulders occasionally brushed. Dr. Chen, Ms. Rodriguez. Director Walsh greeted them in a briefing room filled with monitors showing data from around the globe. Thank you for coming. I need you to see something. The main screen displayed a real-time view from the Hubble Space Telescope. In the center of the image was an object that defied easy description, part crystal, part metal, with surfaces that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury. It was beautiful and alien and utterly impossible by human engineering standards. This appeared in our solar system 18 hours ago, Director Walsh explained. It's maintaining a stable orbit just beyond the moon, and it's been broadcasting your signals. Dr. Chen, while simultaneously creating the mapping anomalies Ms. Rodriguez has been tracking. Marcus felt Emma's hand find his in the darkness of the briefing room. Her fingers were warm and steady, anchoring him to reality as his worldview expanded to accommodate the impossible. They're here, Emma whispered, and Marcus could hear both wonder and fear in her voice. Yes, Director Walsh confirmed, and according to our analysis, They've been trying to establish communication protocols for the past 72 hours. We need to figure out how to talk back," as data flowed across the screens around them. Marcus realized that his life had just changed forever. The cosmos was no longer empty. Humanity was no longer alone, and the woman whose hand he was holding had just become his partner in the most important conversation in human history. Zara Okafor had always been most comfortable in the space between numbers and meaning, where raw data transformed into understanding through careful analysis and intuitive leaps. The underground facility in Nevada felt like the perfect environment for her work, sterile, focused, and humming with the quiet energy of serious scientific inquiry. What she hadn't expected was to find herself completely captivated by the woman sitting across from her in the secure conference room. Emma Rodriguez had arrived at the facility 12 hours earlier, her hair slightly disheveled from travel and her eyes bright with the kind of intellectual excitement that Zara found irresistibly attractive. They'd been introduced briefly during the initial briefing, but it wasn't until Director Walsh assigned them to work together on pattern analysis that Zara had really noticed the elegant way Emma's mind worked, how she could see connections across seemingly unrelated data sets with an intuitive grace that complemented Zara's more methodical approach. "The signal modulation is definitely intentional," Zara said, highlighting sections of the radio telescope data on her workstation. "But it's not just communication, it's adaptive communication. Look how the patterns change based on our response time." Emma leaned closer, close enough that Zara could smell the faint scent of her perfume mixed with the industrial coffee that seemed to fuel everyone in the facility. "You mean they're learning how we process information?" "Exactly. When we take longer to analyze a particular signal burst, the next transmission includes additional contextual markers. They're adjusting their communication style in real time based on our comprehension rate." Emma's fingers traced the data visualization on the screen, and Zara found herself watching those graceful movements with more attention than was strictly professional. "Zara, this is incredible. They're not just trying to communicate with us. They're trying to teach us how to communicate with them." The use of her first name sent a small thrill through Zara that she tried to suppress. She'd been so focused on her career as a data analyst for the National Security Agency that she'd barely had time for relationships, let alone romance. But there was something about Emma's combination of brilliant intellect and genuine warmth that made Zara want to spend more time exploring the person behind the professional facade. "There's something else," Zara said, pulling up a new set of analyses. "The satellite blackouts that you've been tracking, they're not actually blackouts at all. The satellites are still functioning perfectly. They're just being selectively filtered." Emma's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Filtered how?" "The alien signal is somehow interacting with our satellite networks, but instead of jamming them, it's creating a kind of overlay. The dark zones you've been seeing are actually areas where the alien communication system is most active. It's like they're using our own infrastructure as a delivery mechanism for their messages." Emma sank back in her chair, processing this information. "So they've been piggybacking on our communication networks this whole time. That's why the pattern followed our major hubs. They were mapping our digital infrastructure to find the most efficient way to reach us." "Right, and here's the really interesting part." Zara pulled up a global map showing the current distribution of signal activity. "The pattern is accelerating, but it's also becoming more localized. Initially, they were broadcasting to the entire planet simultaneously. Now they're focusing on specific regions, almost like they're conducting individual conversations with different parts of humanity." Emma moved to stand behind Zara's chair, looking over her shoulder at the display. The proximity made Zara acutely aware of Emma's presence, the warmth radiating from her body, the soft sound of her breathing, the way she unconsciously bit her lower lip when concentrating. "Look at this cluster over Europe," Emma said, pointing to a dense collection of signals centered on Geneva. "That's where CERN is located. And this one in California, Silicon Valley," Zara finished. "They're specifically targeting our centers of technological advancement, but not military installations, civilian research facilities." Emma's hand brushed against Zara's shoulder as she leaned forward to examine another section of the map, and Zara felt a flutter of attraction that had nothing to do with alien communications. They're being very careful to avoid anything that might be perceived as threatening, Emma observed. Almost like they're trying to establish trust, Zara agreed, turning slightly in her chair so she could see Emma's face more clearly. You know, this is probably the most important scientific discovery in human history. And I keep getting distracted by how beautiful your smile is when you're working through a complex problem. Emma's cheeks flushed pink, and she laughed softly. I was wondering if I was the only one feeling that tension. I mean, we're literally decoding humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. And all I can think about is how much I want to ask you to dinner once this crisis is over. Zara felt her heart rate spike in a way that had nothing to do with the magnitude of their work. Who says we have to wait until it's over? We still need to eat. And the cafeteria food here is terrible. I packed some real food in my gear bag. Cheese, bread, some decent wine that I smuggled past security. A romantic dinner while decoding alien transmissions, Emma mused. That's either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or the most ridiculous. Why can't it be both? Their moment was interrupted by a chime from the communication system. Marcus Chen's voice filled the room, excitement evident in his tone. Zara, Emma, you need to see this. We just received a massive data burst that's unlike anything we've recorded before. Emma squeezed Zara's hand briefly before they both turned back to their workstations. The new transmission was indeed different. Instead of the gradual, careful patterns they'd been analyzing, this signal was rich and complex, filled with what appeared to be visual information. It's a download, Zara breathed, watching the data stream across her screens. They're sending us some kind of comprehensive information package. Emma was already working to decode the visual components. I'm getting images, Zara. Actual pictures. Look at this. The main display screen filled with a series of images that took Zara's breath away. They showed the alien vessel in exquisite detail, its flowing, organic lines, the way light seemed to bend around its surfaces, the intricate patterns of energy that flowed across its hull, like a living nervous system. But it was the next series of images that made both women gasp in amazement. The pictures showed Earth from space, but not as any human satellite had ever captured it. These images revealed the planet's magnetic field as flowing ribbons of light, the atmospheric circulation patterns as streams of color, the entire biosphere as a complex web of interconnected energy. They see the world completely differently than we do, Emma whispered. To them, Earth isn't just a planet, it's a living system. And they're showing us how they see it, Zara added. This isn't just first contact, it's an invitation to see the universe through their eyes. As more images flowed across their screens, star charts showing their journey to Earth, mathematical representations of their technology, what appeared to be cultural artifacts from their civilization. Zara found herself reaching for Emma's hand again. Whatever happens next, Zara said softly, I'm glad I'm experiencing it with you. Emma's fingers intertwined with hers, and when she smiled, Zara felt like she was seeing the universe through alien eyes, more beautiful, more connected, and full of possibilities she'd never imagined. The communication system chimed again, and Director Walsh's voice filled the room. All teams to the main briefing room immediately. The aliens are requesting a direct response, and we need to decide how humanity is going to answer. As they stood to leave, Emma pulled Zara close for a quick, soft kiss. For luck, she whispered. Zara smiled, feeling like the luckiest person on Earth, or perhaps in the galaxy. I think our luck is just beginning. David Kim had spent the better part of his academic career studying dead languages, deciphering ancient scripts that had been silent for millennia. He never imagined he'd be called upon to help humanity speak with the living representatives of an entirely alien civilization. The secure government facility in Colorado felt surreal as he walked through corridors, lined with monitors displaying real-time data from the alien vessel, each screen showing humanity's first glimpse into a truly foreign intelligence. Professor Kim, thank you for coming so quickly. Director Walsh greeted him at the entrance to the main analysis center. Your work on pattern recognition in unknown linguistic systems makes you uniquely qualified for what we're facing. David adjusted his glasses and took in the bustling activity around him. Dozens of specialists from various fields worked at interconnected workstations, their conversations creating a low hum of urgency and excitement. I have to admit, Director, when you called about xenolinguistic consultation, I thought it was theoretical work. Nothing theoretical about this, I'm afraid. Let me introduce you to the team that's been leading the analysis. David found himself being led to a cluster of workstations, where 3 people were deep in animated discussion. He recognized the focused intensity of researchers on the verge of a breakthrough. It was the same energy he'd felt when finally cracking the grammar structure of linear A. David. Meet Emma Rodriguez, our satellite mapping specialist, Zara Okafor, our lead data analyst, and Marcus Chen, the radio astronomer who first detected the alien signals. As introductions were made, David couldn't help but notice the subtle dynamics between the team members. Emma and Zara stood close together, their body language suggesting a connection that went beyond professional collaboration. Marcus seemed somewhat apart, though his obvious respect for both women was clear in how he deferred to their expertise. Professor Kim, Emma said, extending her hand with a warm smile. We're hoping you can help us understand the linguistic structures in the alien transmissions. We've identified patterns, but we need someone who understands how unknown languages actually work. David shook her hand, noting the firm grip and the slight staining on her fingers, the mark of someone who worked with both digital displays and old-fashioned pen and paper. Please, call me David, and I have to say, this is simultaneously the most exciting and terrifying professional challenge I've ever faced. Zara stepped forward, her expression animated with the enthusiasm of discovery. David, what we've found is incredible. The alien communication system appears to be multidimensional. It incorporates mathematical relationships, visual symbols, acoustic patterns, and what we think might be emotional or contextual markers. Show me, David said, settling into a chair at their workstation cluster. Marcus pulled up the latest transmission data on the main display. This is what we received 6 hours ago. It's the most complex communication yet, and it seems to be specifically requesting a response from us. David studied the flowing patterns of data, his mind automatically shifting into the analytical mode. He'd developed over years of working with fragmentary ancient texts, but this was different. Instead of trying to reconstruct meaning from damaged artifacts, he was looking at a complete, intentional communication from a living intelligence. The mathematical constants are clearly serving as universal references, he mused, pointing to sections of the transmission. But these recurring symbolic clusters, they're not just conveying information, they're establishing relationship parameters. Relationship parameters? Emma asked, leaning closer. David caught a faint scent of her perfume and found himself momentarily distracted by the genuine curiosity in her dark eyes. Think of it like pronouns and honorifics in human languages. David explained, these patterns are establishing who is speaking to whom and what kind of relationship they're trying to create. The aliens aren't just saying hello, they're asking permission to be friends. Zara's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up comparative analysis. That matches what we've been seeing in the signal modulation patterns. They're being incredibly polite, almost deferential. Every transmission includes what appear to be conditional markers. If you're willing, when you're ready, that sort of thing. They're giving us complete control over the pace and nature of contact, Marcus added. It's the opposite of what science fiction usually depicts. David spent the next several hours working with the team to decode the linguistic structures. As the day progressed, he found himself drawn not just to the intellectual challenge, but to the collaborative dynamic of working with such dedicated and brilliant colleagues. Emma's intuitive understanding of communication systems complemented Zara's methodical data analysis perfectly, while Marcus provided crucial context about the technical aspects of signal transmission. David, Emma said during a brief break, I wanted to thank you. Having someone who actually understands how languages work has been incredible. Zara and I were making progress, but we were missing the deeper structural elements. David felt a warmth at the genuine appreciation in her voice. This is the discovery of a lifetime, Emma. I should be thanking all of you for including me in the process, actually. Zara interjected with a slight smile. We were wondering if you'd like to join us for dinner tonight. We've been working such long hours that we thought it might be nice to take a break and get to know each other as people, not just colleagues. David felt a flutter of social anxiety. He'd spent so much time with ancient texts that he sometimes forgot how to interact with living people. I'd like that very much, actually. As evening approached, the four of them found themselves in a small conference room that Emma and Zara had converted into an impromptu dining area. Zara had indeed smuggled in real food and wine, and the atmosphere was surprisingly relaxed given the magnitude of their work. So David, Marcus asked, "What made you decide to study ancient languages? It seems like such a specialized field." David swirled the wine in his glass, considering how to explain his passion for dead civilizations to people working on humanity's greatest living discovery. "I've always been fascinated by the idea that we can reach across thousands of years and understand what people were thinking. Every ancient text is like a message in a bottle, thrown across time instead of across the ocean. And now you're helping us send a message across space," Emma observed. "There's poetry in that." "There is," David agreed, "though I have to admit, it's somewhat intimidating to think that my interpretation of their linguistic patterns could influence humanity's first conversation with an alien species." Zara reached across the small table and squeezed his hand briefly. "David, you're not carrying this responsibility alone. We're all in this together." The warmth of human connection in the midst of such an otherworldly situation struck David as profoundly meaningful. Here they were, for people from completely different backgrounds, brought together by the greatest discovery in human history, and somehow managing to form genuine bonds of friendship and trust. Their quiet dinner was interrupted by an urgent chime from the facility's communication system. Director Walsh's voice filled the room with barely contained excitement. "All senior staff to the main communication center immediately. The alien vessel is moving, and they're broadcasting what appears to be a formal diplomatic protocol. We need to prepare humanity's official response." As they hurried toward the communication center, David felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. In the next few hours, the words he helped craft might determine the future relationship between humanity and an entire alien civilization. Emma fell into step beside him as they walked down the corridor. "David, are you ready for this?" He looked at her determined face, then at Zara and Marcus flanking them, and felt a surge of confidence. "With this team, I think we can handle anything the universe throws at us." "Good," Emma said with a smile that made David's heart skip slightly, "because I have a feeling our real work is just beginning."